We're live.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so did Angus join, or he's still not on?
No, he's not on.
Okay. All right. So good morning, everybody. At this time, I'll call to order the special meeting of the Suffern Central Board of Education. Today is Sunday, February 7th, 2021, and it's 10:03 a.m. Let the record reflect that all board members are present with the exception of Mr. McKenzie. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And you can all still hear me okay, right?
You're good.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to take a minute and just explain why we're meeting at 10 a.m. on a Sunday. And, and then maybe Lee or Andy, you can just you can maybe just provide more context. But the purpose of this meeting is because late last week, we were given the go-ahead for certain winter sports to resume. And in order to get our students able to practice tomorrow, the board has to pass a resolution to do that. So because things transpired so late on Friday, it didn't give us the ability to have a meeting before the weekend. So, I just want to say thank you to everybody here, board members, administration, for, really pulling together and answering emails at weird hours and sending resolutions and updates at weird hours just to get this done so that all of our student athletes can begin to participate starting tomorrow, which I think all of us felt was important. So I'll go to, so if we go to superintendent comments, Lee, if you have anything else you want, if you want to add anything to that.
Yes, thank you for explaining that. I'd like to add, this all did sort of happen very quickly. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and then it happened quickly. We had to wait. The governor made the announcement, but then he deferred to the local departments of health, and so there was a time frame where we had to wait for that. I want to commend Mr. Guccione and his coaches. Mr. Guccione has been on top of every single detail associated with these sports. He's explained things to me. He's been patient. He's been communicating extensively with the other ADs in the county and in Section 1, and with all of our coaches to make sure that we are ready, that we have all the precautions in place, and that we are ready to start practice tomorrow. I also want to thank the board for being willing to meet this morning to make it possible for our students to pass tomorrow. So thank you to the board, and thank you to Andy, Mr. Guccione, for all you have done to make this happen. And Mr. Guccione, if you want to add anything, I would welcome you to.
Well, I'd like to thank Lee and the board for the support and helping us get this off the ground. Our coaches have really been phenomenal, holding off-season practices, doing whatever they can leading up to this moment where they were hoping we would finally get in the gym and play basketball and get on the ice and play hockey and, the competitive cheer team. It's very important to a lot of people, and it means a lot that you were willing to come together on a Sunday to ensure that this happens on Monday. I would also like to thank the county athletic directors and superintendents on top of just Lee Weber. We had a very productive meeting earlier in the week that really helped us get off the ground so we could be prepared to go on Monday.
All right.
Andy, thank you, and thank you coaches for their for all the effort they put into this. And let's get the students out there. This is important. But thank you, and please extend that to the coaches.
Okay, thank you, Lee and Andy, thank you for going into all that extra detail. Heather, are you there? Is Heather there?
Yeah, no, I'm here. I have no.
Okay. You have anything to read? Any public participation? No. Okay. So action items 2.01. This is the resolution that the board is going to pass so that we can begin our practices tomorrow. Do I have a motion for the resolution?
Motion.
Mr. Donnelly, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Frazier. All those in favor signify.
Discussion, please.
Oh, sorry, discussion. Yes, my apologies.
Okay. I know how important it is to the students and to the coaches and to the well-being of the school and just to the community. But I have a lot of reservations, personal, in terms of the health risks. And I've read through everything that the Department of Health has. I read through all of our things, and sure, everything is there. I also know what's happening at the next level up, which is at the collegiate level. There they have all of their athletes testing a minimum of twice a week. And I know that's not part of what we're going to be doing, but that's at the next level. And I don't see how we can be so certain that there's not going to be a problem. And if there are no problems, great. But let's say that there's a problem. Let's say that there are now issues that come up, and I'm talking about student athletes coming down with the COVID-19. And what happens then? What's the next process? What is it that the district will have to do? What will we need to do? We see what happens at the collegiate level. Games are canceled. Games are postponed. In some cases, in entire conferences say, okay, we're not going to play, or we're going to shut down for a week or two weeks. There's just so much uncertainty there, and I understand that there are sign-offs that the parents are going to sign, and there's the code of conduct or ethics, whatever. But I just have a lot of reservation about this, and it's all about the health of the student athletes, who then will go into classes if they're in the classroom during the week. And then if they test positive, or if they come down with something and then they go test and it turns out that they're positive, now it affects non-scholar athletes, and it affects teachers and administrators and anyone else who's in the building. And if they, it's the whole thing, it's the domino effect. So I just have a lot of reservation, but I know how important it is. Listen, I used to coach in my youth. I used to coach high school sports, and I know what it meant. And I know what it meant as a coach. I look forward to the end of the school day and going into the gym or going out onto the field or going to the track and being with students who I might not see throughout the day, but I love seeing them afterwards and working with them at their particular sport. So I know what it is to coach. I just have a lot of reservations about this, and I just hope that, assuming that this is going to be approved by the board, I just hope that we're prepared for anything that come up, and that we know that we may have to, we'll have to postpone, we'll have to cancel, whatever the situation is. So that's my thought. Thank you.
Right. I think we all, well, I'm sure that we all agree with, with your feelings that there's definitely some trepidation in doing this. And, there's a lot of what ifs out there. So, thank you for your statements, Paul.
I'd like to agree with Paul. I'm getting a feedback here. But one of the things that we really have to look at is basically the bottom line, and that is the board making the right decision for the students, the parents, and the teachers? It seems like everybody in the state has basically off this idea from the state to the county, okay, and left it up to the individual school boards. I know last night I saw on television that Long Island, some of the school districts there, they are permitting sports activities. However, all the students who are in those activities can only have virtual education. They cannot get back into the classroom. Andy, is that something that you are thinking of, or are you going to bring those students back into the classroom at this point?
I don't have a plan to enforce anything like that. I think maybe a first step would be to look at the roster. And are you referring to the high-risk athletes?
Yes.
Or all the winter athletes?
High risk.
Okay, so what I can do, if you want, as a first step, is I can look to see how many are actually coming to school. It may be a very low percentage where maybe we don't feel it's important to enforce policy like that. But I mean, I'm open to what the board is. I mean, I understand there's some trepidation. I completely understand it. And if you'd like to take further steps and look into something like that, I'm open to that.
Have you discussed this whole situation with the SEA with regard to having the students do high-risk sports and then come back into the classrooms? As you know, I've been a very strong supporter of trying to protect the teachers. Approximately 400 teachers in the U.S. have died because of COVID-19. And we've had a number of emails and so forth from suffering teachers saying that they are afraid of going into the classroom. They would really prefer to be virtual at this point. We've done the hybrid system, but this system that you're now putting in basically puts the academic teachers and staff in jeopardy. Has there been any contact with the SEA and the teachers to see if you have their support of bringing students who are going to be practicing during the afternoons and then coming into the classroom? Because you're not only afraid of giving it to the other students, and those other students can bring it home to their parents, grandparents, and so forth, and also the teachers. We've had all of those different things happen. The other thing, I don't know if you know the story of the intelligence pill. Are you familiar with that story?
No.
No? Oh, okay. Well, once upon a time, the intelligence pill basically is where someone developed an IQ pill. And the student got a hold of it, and he was an average student, but now he's taking the pill, and he is now the brainiest student and #1, okay, in everything. It's going to be really very successful. Of course, all the other students in the classroom now basically have to get the intelligence pill because they're going to be left behind. And this creates a problem where, what happens to the student who's in athletics, in high-risk sports, and the parents say no, okay? They can't participate because of the danger. They have maybe grandparents living with them. The peer pressure, okay, of that happening is great in middle school and high school. And that's one of the things I think we have to look at, is that you're opening this up, but then, what happens to those students who are, in those sports, but their parents say, no, you cannot participate. And, if you read the Department of Health statement, okay, it says basically high-risk sports and recreation activities increase the possibility of transmission of COVID-19 among students, their families, and their community. Competition and tournaments also increase the risk. So my question is, with regard to those high risk, are we making the right decision? What is the risk management here for this to happen? I understand some of the sports, there's lower risk, but with regard to say, wrestling in particular, which also the Rockland County Board of Health mentions in particular as a very, very high risk. So I'm just curious as to, are we making the right decision based on the information that we have? According to the Rockland Board of Health, there's every reason to hope for a much safer environment for schools and school-related activities as time progresses. But right now, they're saying that we're increasing, and the new variant seems to impact on women and children, students. So again, along with Paul, I love sports. I've played sports all the time. But at this point, are we going to make the right decision, or should we wait a little bit and see what's going to be going on at this point? Or maybe decide what risks students should be taking, and parents and the teachers who are in the classrooms?
So Mr. Cairns, I'll address a few of the points that you made. There have been conversations. Remember that all of our coaches are also SEA members. Some of them are executive board members of the SEA. So in those conversations with coaches, you're essentially talking with the SEA while you're doing that. I also want to tell you a few of the patterns we saw in the fall, and this goes back to something you brought up also, Paul. So one of the recommendations from the DOH, if there's a positive case, we're shut down. That team is in quarantine. That happened in the fall. It happened to the varsity and JV girls soccer teams when there was a positive case, and they were out 2 weeks. So that's, if there's a positive case, the protocol's already in place for that. The other thing that happened in the fall, we didn't officially tell anyone to do it, but really most of the athletes at the high school made the choice to go full remote in order to avoid being caught up in quarantine. So they didn't want to get caught up in quarantine because they were in class with someone. And as a result, they went full remote to preserve their sport. So that was a voluntary act on their part, but it was a very significant pattern that we saw. Very, very noticeable pattern. I don't know what each family and each child is going to decide, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that same pattern again, without mandating that they have to be full remote. I'll also add that we have talked about, particularly for wrestling, we have talked about testing before matches so that students would have a rapid test before a wrestling match, like that day, not 3 days before, but that day, to have a rapid test. That's really the most effective way to do it. So if we get to that point, that is something that we're definitely looking to make happen. So those are some of the extra things that go above and beyond what the Department of Health has said. I totally understand your concerns and your thoughts. I would add that there's a reason these are called higher risk. And so we're calling them that, making it clear that there is a higher risk. I'll also add that these are voluntary. And I hear what you say, Mr. Cairns, about, well, someone could sit out, but then there's some peer pressure. Every family and every student needs to make that decision for themselves. We give them as much information as we have. We put our protocols in place, but ultimately that's a choice that a family, a parent, and a child makes together. Sports are inherently risky. Just by the nature of some of these sports are riskier than others, having nothing to do with COVID. Some of them are more risky because of COVID, and it's a voluntary activity that, our parents and our kids are moving. I think that hit most of the points, not every point, but I think that hit most of them.
Well, I agree with you with regards to the coaches wanting to, have the teams, but I'm talking about the academic teachers, English and history and other areas that we've heard from, who are deathly afraid of, having COVID in their classroom and then in their family. So that's my wish of not only hearing from the coaches in the schools, but really the entire, number of teachers who will be, unfortunately, part of this whole decision. And again, the Rockland Board of Health indicates that the CDC recently reported on an outbreak of COVID-19 at a wrestling tournament, further highlighting the risk, including death, inherent in these types of sports. And the other thing it says also, masking, distancing, and other mitigation measures reduce but do not eliminate the risk. This is part of that problem that I think we really should look at this a little bit more closely with regard to the really higher risk. The other question I would have is that with regard to the coaches, okay, if they come down with the COVID-19, if something happens to them, okay, what is the responsibility of the school district?
So it's the same as it would be if they were a teacher. We've had teachers test positive. So everyone goes into quarantine. So
and they're also signing the statement that they agree that, the school board is not going to be responsible if anything happens. Not only the parents and the students, but the coaches. What happens in the end if they catch the problem and someone unfortunately dies? Is there a lawsuit against the school board for allowing this system?
Once again, it's optional. They're choosing to coach. There's a voluntary aspect here. They're not required to.
Right, but are they going to sign any paperwork saying that, if they do come down with COVID, the school is not responsible?
I'll check with Mr. Shaw, but the voluntary nature of coaching, I believe, precludes that, but I'll check with Mr. Shaw. I do want to just address you're saying you'd like to wait more and postpone it. And absolutely, if that's what you need to do in order to place your vote, then do what you need to do. However, I do want to say that if we postpone, our kids won't have a season. So this is a very short season to begin with. It's a 4-week season, maybe 5 weeks. And so any postponing, they need a certain number of practices before they can compete. The practices don't count until it's approved. And so postponing it would essentially eliminate their season. They wouldn't have the opportunity to go later in the year because everyone else is competing now. So if we decided, well, we'll play basketball, but we'll play in May. Well, we're not going to have anyone to play again. So that's just something for you all to think about in terms of the time frame.
So we have to basically vote on all high-risk students as one vote. I think there's a difference between the higher risk of, say, basketball or versus maybe football or wrestling.
For today, our winter. I think someone needs to mute. This vote is the ones listed in the resolution, which are varsity boys ice hockey, varsity girls ice hockey, boys basketball, freshman JV varsity, girls basketball, freshman JV varsity, competitive cheer, and wrestling. Those are the ones you're voting on today.
Okay, is there any, are there, Don, I think I think your point is well made. Are there any other comments? I mean, any other board members that have any other concerns or opinions? I can't see any hands being raised, so I'm gonna, if there is, then please say, yes, I do, or
No, I'm good, Matt. I'm good. I'm ready to vote.
I apologize. I just can't see anything.
No, Matt, I'm okay. I'm ready to vote as well. It's Darren.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, Matt, I just have a quick question of clarification on the wrestling. I appreciate all the comments so far, and certainly, my approach has always been risk-benefit assessment on anything, trying to mitigate risk, limit risk to get as much benefit as we can. And I think, the plans that I'm reviewing here are very detailed, and even some of the protocols of having 2 mats at a wrestling match, one's being sanitized, one's being used. I mean, I think, I think that's, really an amazing above and beyond type of approach to this. From my standpoint and all the research I've done on wrestling in general, I think the wrestling, if you can limit large tournaments, and most of the outbreaks and issues have been large tournament related, and stick to practices and dual meets where you have a lot of control over who's there, I think that really mitigates the risk and limits the risk immensely. And secondly, I think pre-match testing, I would strongly recommend that. Logistically, it might be hard to get accurate PCRs in a timely manner, but I would advocate using the rapid tests, just for a time efficiency measure. And if you can test the wrestlers before on the mat, within a couple hours, I think that also greatly reduces the risk as well. So I would recommend that. So I think it's definitely a question of limiting risk. You're never going to make anything risk-free. And I think we know that, from our dealings with COVID. I mean, you try to know your personal risk, limit your personal risk, and do the best you can going forward. And I think, I think, all these plans in place, I think do that. And I'm, comfortable with this process moving forward. I think it's something that, has benefit. And I do think it's not without risk, but I think it does have benefit. So that's my statement.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so then if there's no other comments, let's take the vote. So for action item 2.01, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those against? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Present.
Okay. I want to make sure I got this right. So Mr. Frazier, Mr. Donnelly, Dr. Nickpon, and myself were yays. Mr. Shapiro and Mr. Cairns were both abstentions, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Technically, it's present. There's a difference between abstain and present.
Well, but I'm not giving you the option to be present. I'm giving you the option to abstain.
It's 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. Come on.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all. This motion passes. Okay. I guess board member comments would be next. Are there any board member comments aside from what we've already discussed?
Yes, I'd like to join Tommy in thanking Andy for all of your work and Lee for all of your work. This is not easy. We're still in this fog of a situation that has come upon not only us but the entire country, actually the entire world. But really, thank you for all of your efforts. And as Dr. Nickpon stated, really, the two mats, the constantly cleaning, that really will help cut down on anything that might happen. And obviously, we're all hoping that nothing happens and that all of the athletes and coaches and any other people who are there at any of the matches or any of the games are healthy prior to and afterwards. So, but thank you again, Andy, for all of your work, and Lee, of course.
Right, thank you. Any other board member comments? No. Okay, we'll close that portion. Public participation on any district-related business, Heather, is there anything?
No, I have nothing.
Okay, great. Closing superintendent comments?
I'd just like to thank the board again for your support and for moving forward. Thank you to Mr. Guccione for all he's done and continue to do. He's got a very busy month ahead of him to make sure, all of this It's followed closely, but I'm very confident it will be between the coaches and Mr. Guccione. I'm very confident that, we'll proceed the way this is supposed to happen. To our athletes, I wish you a wonderful, though shortened season. And I just want to point out, Mr. Guccione retweeted something last night that I think is a really important message for our athletes. A lot of people have worked really hard to make this happen, and don't spoil it. Don't go to Super Bowl parties tonight. Make really smart decisions. That Super Bowl party that's a super spreader. So just want to wish our athletes the best for a good season and really think about every decision they make, every time they're out, every time they're exposed to people. Wear a mask, keep socially distanced, make this happen in a good way.
Yep, I'll second that.
Well said, Lee. Well said.
Yep, 100%.
Thank you for the reassurance.
All right, then that is going to do it. Again, I just want to thank everybody for taking the time this morning on a Sunday to hold this meeting and to have the discussion. So thank you all again. At this time, I would make a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Mr. Donnelly, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Shapiro, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Have a great day, everyone.
Enjoy the Super Bowl. Enjoy watching more snow collect outside. and thank you all again, and we'll see you again soon.
Okay.
Take care, everyone.
Okay. Stay
Bye-bye.
healthy.
Have a good day.
Stay safe, everyone.
Yep.
Okay, Lee.